Welcome to episode 27 of the Cancer Pod. Today we're reviewing Miss Sharon Jones, a documentary from 2015. I'm Dr. Tina Kaiser, and one movie that will inevitably make me cry is The Notebook.
And I'm Dr. Leah Sherman, and one movie that always makes me cry is Elf.
And we're two naturopathic doctors who practice integrative cancer care.
But we're not your doctors.
This is for education, entertainment, and informational purposes only.
Do not apply any of this information without first speaking to your doctor.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast by the hosts and their guests are solely their own.
Welcome to the Cancer Pod.
Hey, Leah.
Hey, Tina.
We're back at the movies.
Yes, we are. And this is a good one.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of this. So thanks for introducing me to Miss Sharon Jones.
Yeah, and I know that you're not one to watch films that potentially can make you cry. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this movie.
From the opening, I thought it was going to be, a real tearjerker, but it turned out to be more of a story of her life, which I think was well told. So today we're going to talk about the movie itself, what it's about. Of course, it's about Miss Sharon Jones, but what we liked about it, what we might have changed or what we're curious about, what we didn't like about it, and then kind of talk about whether the movie's relatable, on what levels, and who might enjoy it.
And what part sticks out the most. And that'll just kind of be interjected throughout because that's the way we do this.
Yep. Unscripted.
Semi-scripted on my end. I have my notes. I do take notes. I didn't take a lot of notes on this one. And I know you said you didn't either, because I really wanted to watch it because I knew only a little about Sharon Jones before watching the movie. And so I really wanted to focus on it. I guess we could start by saying the movie was filmed or it was released in 2015, and you can watch it on Canopy if you have a library card. And you can watch it for free on Canopy. You can watch it for free on Tubi, but they have ads. And then you can also watch it on Amazon Prime for just a few bucks.
And I think you can find it on Apple TV. And there was maybe one other that was more obscure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's where you can find it. So who was Sharon Jones? She was an R&B soul singer who got her start back in New York, in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. So she was around for a really long time, but was kind of finding it hard to really make it.
Yeah. So for decades, she was singing any gig she could find, including weddings to make the bills, which was pretty profound. I mean, her story was kind of a rags to riches story, although we never really got a sense of how far she climbed. Her success level from a monetary perspective, we never got a sense of.
Right. And she says, one of the reasons that made it so hard, because she's this fireball of talent, was that she was told that she was too fat, too black, too short, and too old.
Yeah. And I think she might have been told that in the 1980s is what I surmised.
Well, no, it's ridiculous. And that's just kind of that's kind of an aspect of the music business that is just really.
Yeah.
But she was kind of known as the female James Brown. Mm-hmm. Which was just, that was her persona. I mean, the music is very much of that era, the sort of James Brown era, but just her persona on stage. I mean, she kicks off her heels and she's dancing and she's just that. Just watching her performances in the film, it's amazing. I mean,
yeah, the amount of energy that the music gives her is amazing to watch. She's just under 5 feet tall, so she is rather short.
Oh, that's what my note was. 4'11" and a quarter.
Mm-hmm. And she would dance in bare feet, but man, she didn't look small on stage.
No. And that comes up a few times. People just think she's a lot larger in person because she's so larger than life,
Yeah. Yeah.
So they kind of introduce you to her music initially, and then it kind of cuts and they talk about how her eyes turn yellow and she ends up going to the doctor.
Yeah, so her presenting symptom was jaundice, which shows up in the whites of the eyes.
Yeah, so they go to the doctor, and then the doctor says something and mentions something about cancer, and she's with her manager, and the manager was like, we hadn't been told it was cancer at that point.
And it turned out to be what's called an ampullary cancer, which is right at the exit of the pancreatic duct into the small intestine.
And then I remember like looking at the time on the movie because the next scene she's getting her hair cut off, and that's 4 minutes in.
Yeah, yeah. So they did kind of a almost like a little summary, like a fast forward in the beginning, and then panned back and slowed us down and took us through what was going on month to month. So she was diagnosed in about, was it October?
I don't know. I didn't write down the months, but it just kind of starts off with we don't see her get the surgery.
No.
She gets a Whipple.
She has a Whipple procedure, which is an intense and very extensive removal of basically the upper GI, right? It's usually half or so of the pancreas, it's the gallbladder, it's part of the small intestine, and sometimes it's even part of the lower aspect of the stomach. So there's a lot going on. A lot is removed. It's a tough surgery to overcome. Usually intense nutrition has to be done, and sometimes even all of the calories are gotten directly into the bloodstream through an IV.
And that kind of brings us to, like, she's really fortunate, right? Because she has this longtime friend, Megan, who is a holistic nutritionist. And so she takes Sharon in. She actually brings her to her home in Sharon Springs, New York, and takes care of her, like gives her, prepares food for her and makes sure that she's nutritionally sound. And I think that's incredible. What a gift to be able to offer someone. She's a musician. Sharon's a musician. It's not like she has all this, health insurance. I mean, she's been a working musician like her whole life. I thought that was like really incredible to have that available, to have somebody take you into their home.
Yeah. Just for the record, she doesn't have children of her own. She's got, nieces, nephews, and even great nieces and great nephews. And she's close to her family who are apparently down in South Carolina.
Yeah, she went to Georgia and South Carolina at one point. So some family, I think, in Augusta, and then she's got family in South Carolina.
Okay. But she gets her actual treatment in upstate New York, in Sharon Springs and in the Cooperstown area.
Yeah, in Cooperstown. I think because that's where the hospital is, in Cooperstown.
Can I interject since we're talking about Cooperstown?
Yes.
Of course. One of my favorite things was to see upstate New York in the background of those pictures because I grew up fairly close to Cooperstown, New York. Okay,
so one of my favorite things, I really loved seeing the scenes around Sharon Springs and like when she goes to the farm. It's because, you know me. I mean, my goal is to live in an area kind of like that and to have animals. And yeah, upstate New York is like, it's on one of my lists. And Sharon Springs is one of my places I really want to visit. So I thought that was really neat as well because it looks like a beautiful area.
Yeah, all of upstate and central New York is quite beautiful. Sharon Springs itself is a little village. I mean, I don't think it has more than a population of 1,000 people. So it's this little tiny thing. But the fact that it's called Sharon Springs, and this is Miss Sharon Jones, also didn't escape me.
I know. That did not escape me either. Anyway, so it shows the time, that she's spending up there. It kind of cuts to the scene where she's getting her port accessed and she makes this face. And I actually laughed. And then she goes, I can taste it. And like, I knew that's what she was going to say because it's like that certain face that like, whether it's disgust or just like weird, it's such a strange taste when your port is flushed. The saline. I think I've mentioned before, for me, it was, it tasted like garlic water. But yeah, I mean, some people are really like grossed out by it. But anyways, some people really don't like the taste. But yeah, at that point, when I saw that face, I actually laughed because I was like, I know that face. And then she kind of goes into like some of the side effects that she's getting where her nails and the palms of her hands and the soles of her feet are all darkening, which is something that, I think we often talk to our patients about, like, this is, a potential side effect. And then you see her putting her fingertips in the ice as well.
Yep. Trying to lessen that delivery of the drug.
Yeah. So, whether it's lessening any potential neuropathy, because they don't talk about what she's getting. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that I think some of us can relate to.
Yeah. And because she was given a stage 2 diagnosis and an aggressive surgery, we can presume that the chemotherapy was also somewhat aggressive because they were going for a curative effect, as opposed to just a palliative effect where you're just suppressing a disease process that's present and you're not going to get rid of all of it.
Oh, for sure. And they talk about, like how it was an aggressive cancer. So, there are little interviews throughout. There are interviews with the Dap-Kings, which that's her backup band. And they're all family. Like, Sharon's their sister. I mean, they're just like, they're so close. And you see the effect of what she's going through on not only emotionally, but their livelihood is the band.
Mm-hmm.
And she just wants to get back out there and perform, because if she's not out on stage, nobody's making money.
Yeah, that was an interesting aspect. On her shoulders was, of course, the band, because she's the front for the band, and the Dap-Kings rely on her for their own paychecks, and also her family too. She's the youngest of 6 children, and she has supported everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That is included in the movie as one of her trials.
Yeah.
One of the things that was going on. And it's interesting. It's almost that her struggles with relationships actually took precedence over her struggles with the treatment. The treatment happened in the context of all of those other struggles, it seemed like. So we didn't see her recovering from surgery. We didn't see the details. There was no scenes where she was nauseous. Maybe she never was nauseous. But what I'm saying is it felt like there was a lot of emphasis on the relationships, understandably,
Right.
and the challenges it brought to those relationships, where she said, what am I, just a money machine to everybody? Right. It was interesting to watch those dynamics of her between her manager or the Dap-Kings, and kind of questioning, like, what is our relationship then if you don't allow me the space to be ill right now?
Yeah, no, and I think it kind of like, this is like what kind of struck me with this movie, as well as the previous one, Tig, which we talked about in the last episode, is you get a cancer diagnosis, and for the patient, in some ways, time stops.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go through treatment, and, this is my experience, is it's like this Groundhog Day. You're just kind of living treatment to treatment. You're just trying to get through it. And life goes on. Life is going on around you, whether it's, you still have your family to take care of, whether your family is, your spouse and your children, or your family is your bass player and your trumpet player. All this stuff is going on. I don't know. It's a lot. It is, in some ways, like we saw in the first movie, like life goes on, and it seemed to be both positive and negative. And in this movie, like, life goes on. She's constantly thinking, like, this all has to end by this date, because I've got an album coming out and I need to be on tour and I need to be on stage. At one point they're like, she thinks she's getting her last chemo, and they're like, no, we want you to keep getting more chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still like, like, she's got things that she needs to do. Life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways where, it feels like everything stops, it really doesn't. And if there aren't shows, there isn't any money, and, there's insurance issues and all of this stuff. So that's like the negative part of how life goes on. And then there's like the positive part of life going on of, we just got booked on Ellen. We're going to do the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, like, all of that is also, life is going on. And this is what continues. And it's kind of this reminder of, and I'm talking about myself now, is remembering, like, when I went through treatment, to continue to the best of my ability to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
We find ourselves in these situations where, if, we do complete treatment, then you get a scan in 3 months, living scan to scan.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make plans beyond 3 months, because I don't know what the heck's going to be happening in 3 months. Don't make plans beyond 6 months, because I don't know what's going to be happening. It's like, it's a hard thing to balance, right?
Yeah. Her dealing with it was somewhat interesting, because she had her crew and their studio down in New York City. She removed herself physically from that area and was in upstate in Cooperstown to get her treatment. And later in the movie, we find out she ignored her reading of her lyrics and memorizing them and all the things for when she gets back, almost like she was trying to remove this segment. And she went through her day to day, and it went from talk show to talk show, basically, right? And like when she was laying down.
Oh, and she went through her day about, like, I start my day with this show, and she goes, like, every single show, and then she's watching, like, The View, and she watches The Talk, and then she watches Ellen, and, like, yeah.
And there was a little sense of, although the band is her family, there was a little sense of them not coming through for her, especially when she just wanted to celebrate and go out to dinner with the whole crew, and that got rescheduled. So she was going to celebrate. She's going to be on the Ellen show. She tells her backup singers, they're all, excited for her. And then she goes to tell the band, and she thinks they're going to celebrate at a dinner. And they're like, oh, we'll celebrate when we do the show in LA. And she was looking forward to it in a, I'm back. Here we go. Mm-hmm. Everything's normal. Let's just celebrate the normalcy of moving forward. And she took it really hard for just a rescheduling of a dinner. She took it pretty emotionally, and it was a pretty big blow up, right? But that's because it represented so much more to her.
Right.
So I thought that was really cleverly done. And it almost implied a little bit to me at that moment. I'm thinking to myself, where were they while she was up in Sharon Springs? Did they check on her? We don't have a sense of how often they touched base with her. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know. I mean, clearly the woman she was staying with was instrumental and incredibly helpful in every sense of the word, a true friend. And then I wondered about the band. Did they check in? I mean, she said they all checked in and said, can you loan me some money? Which was a little bit harsh to hear, I thought. Anyways, I thought that was kind of odd that they all reached out and said, can you loan me some money? Every one of them. They included that aspect of their communication, but they didn't include any other communication between the band members and her while she was there.
Yeah. And I guess I just kind of assumed that there were other communications too. But yeah, that really wasn't covered.
Anyways, it was just something I noticed, and I thought to myself, when people are in that situation, checking in might be a good idea.
Yeah. No, and it's like, and I felt for the band, it's like, when this is how you make a living. I mean, it was scary for them, and not to be crass, but it was scary for them, I'm sure, on, multiple levels. I mean, this is their family who's going through this great unknown, and it's also their livelihood. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine the pressure of that, of knowing that these people rely on you. I mean, that happens on so many levels with people going through treatment.
I always say what it takes when people are under the pressure of cancer, especially. And I always thought this of couples in my office, but maybe I could think of it in a broader sense of family dynamics. I'm not privy to what goes on in people's homes, right? But generally speaking, it amplifies a lot of things that are already present in the dynamics of a relationship. So if I'm seeing a couple in my office and they're already rather close, I can see them come together and become closer. I've also seen couples sit almost back to back in two chairs in my office where they're clearly, this is not an easy time for them, and their dynamics were already in place. And so what I'm saying is, when she gets her diagnosis, there's already plenty of family dynamics in place with the band that probably just get amplified with the diagnosis.
I mean, they do care about her, and she's out there and she's making plans and she's like looking to the future because that's what she needs, right? Mm-hmm. And the band is worried. She has that scare at one point where she goes in to get her CT scan and they think they see something. And then she has to get an upper endoscopy to, further explore it. And, you could see the concern of everyone around her thinking that this is done. And, it turned out not to be anything at that time.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting kind of line for everyone to walk between, you're going to be okay, she's the strongest woman I know, if anyone can do this, it's going to be her, to some level of denial that it could go a different direction. Do you know what I mean? So there was in my view, when I saw these people, when they showed clips of band members, sometimes I thought, do they realize like this could go either way? I didn't have a sense that the band saw that, except for at the end with the young woman who kind of hits her hard, like, oh my gosh, this could come back and we could lose her. Like, she emoted, and her manager also, Sharon's manager also emoted. I think he knew the story the whole time, but I felt a little bit like the band members might have put on blinders to any other scenario except her coming back. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they didn't include the footage. I only have an hour and a half to make an assessment, but that's what I was left with.
I don't know. Maybe I was just putting into what they were saying, because the movie is filmed in real time. Like, they're planning on releasing this documentary. They don't talk about it being a documentary, but that is obviously, there are cameras, places, and these aren't reenactments. But eventually she gets her last chemo.
It was New Year's Eve,
2013. And then they flash back to 2006, New Year's Eve. And it shows her backstage. She actually went on stage after learning of her brother's death. basically the whole thing was like, the show must go on. And she goes out on stage and she freaking kills it, and she's had tragedy in her life. She at one point talks about her mom. At that point, I think I did tear up a little bit. Just because of the things that are happening in her life, all of the, the album being released and all of that.
She implied her mom went through chemotherapy as well.
Yeah, because there's that one point where she's like, she looks in the mirror and she's like, I see, my mom lost her hair, and I, like she was seeing her mom looking at herself. So yeah. So early 2014, her album is released, right? This much anticipated album is released. She goes to LA and they're like on all the talk shows. They're on Conan O'Brien. They're on Jimmy Fallon. All she wanted to do when she's on Ellen is she's like, can I dance with Ellen? And she gets to dance with Ellen, right? And they show that clip. And then she goes for that CT scan that I mentioned. And then she rings the bell, right? The dreaded bell.
Why do you call it dreaded?
Well, there are many people who never ring the bell, and you're sitting in infusion and you hear somebody complete treatment and you ring the bell. They ring the bell when they complete treatment, and people sit there knowing that they will never reach that point in their treatment. I used to tell my patients who would express, being upset with the whole bell thing. There was a bell at the exit to the cancer center. And I was like, what's stopping you from ringing that damn bell every time you leave the place? Ring it when you come in, announce that you're here. I'm like, reframe the bell. And my mom, even like when she completed her treatment, she rang the bell. And then when she had to go back on treatment, she hated it. She hated that damn bell.
Oh, it symbolizes the end of treatment. And there are people who don't have an end to their treatment.
Right.
Okay.
So this is still January 2014. I mean, she did a whirlwind of interviews and then gets the CT scan, rings the bell. And then February 6, 2014, she sells out the Beacon Theater in New York City. It kind of shows her, getting ready to go out. And she said something that was something like, she's trying to keep going, and it's a lot. There was a lot riding on her. And then she goes out on stage, and I lost it. I just burst out crying. That's the moment that I cried in the movie, was when and just thinking about it, of her going out on stage, and just, it was incredible to watch her. It really was. I mean, what a freaking, it was one of the Dap-ettes during her interview described her voice as being like a train. I mean, it freaking comes at you, and it just, it was amazing. It was amazing to see that performance. So when she goes up on stage, she forgets the lyrics.
Yeah.
For the song, like she comes out. I mean, it's kind of like, it's really charming. Like she forgets the lyrics, and, she just finished treatment and she's dancing, and she's just like working so hard. And in previous scenes, you see her like walking up the stairs to Dap-Tone Studios, and she's just walking real slow. And I'm feeling like, you're feeling it as she's going up those stairs. You're like, oh man, that's a lot of stairs. But there she is out on stage, and it's like everything gets left behind, and she is just so present.
It's like she's a woman possessed. I mean, and I think like in a good way. Not only possessed by bad things, but a woman possessed in that, like, it harkens back to the scene where she goes into the small church, makes it up the stairs, barely gets up the stairs, makes her way in, and then belts out a solo to the group. And by the end of her song, you can't stop her. She's dancing, she's whipping around, she's just gyrating. She's got so much energy. She's going James Brown in the church. But it was similar, right? That's what happens when she gets on stage.
Right. Everything gets left behind. And I mean, her energy just came through the screen. I mean, it just was like, I mean, I was like on the couch and I'm like dancing and moving my feet, and I'm like totally like, oh my God. Yeah, that church scene was amazing.
Yeah. And that's all I can think of when she went on stage that time, when she's 5 or 6 weeks out from her last chemotherapy, and then she gets as much energy. It's just not even, I mean, it's amazing that she would have that much energy. So clearly it's coming from somewhere other than physical.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
it just kind of shows like how, like I said, like life goes on, right? I mean, you see her, she's working out, she's going to the gym, she's drinking her little green juices all throughout. You see her with a cup, you see her, with a jar, which I thought was really, really cute. And that she got like her friend made her a smoothie and put it in a little mason jar. And she goes off to treatment. So, you see her, it was January 2015, and she's just doing everything she can to keep going.
They cut to a newscast where the local newscaster is talking about how a small tumor was removed from her liver. So this is a reoccurrence that we know about at the very end of the movie.
Right.
And that's after that, you see her drinking the green drink and running on a treadmill and taking care of herself again and getting back out there.
Right. I'm assuming that, she had some procedure to...
She had a surgery to remove that.
Oh, she had the surgery. Oh.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So the newscast talks about how she had a surgery to remove a small tumor that was on her liver.
Okay.
And at the end of the movie, we assume everything is going to carry on and she will get back up on stage because that's what she does.
Right. And then the closing credits song is I'm Still Here.
So that brings us to our rating, overall rating.
Our rating system, right? So our overall rating system, we're just doing Lotus Pods on a scale of 0 to 5, 5 being the best. Tina, what's your rating?
I'm going to give it 3.5.
Really?
Yeah, I liked her. I thought she was compelling, but I'm thinking of it from a documentary perspective. I feel like there was a lot left out in the various relationships that I was curious about. And if they had a camera following them everywhere, I kind of wanted more. I wanted more in-depth look at what was going on.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm giving it a 5.
Wow. You liked it more than Tig.
There was just something about it. I guess it was the goats at Beekman Farm in Sharon Springs. That's at least one Lotus Pod. No, it's, the music, the struggle that she had, like from the very beginning, like her story is just, it's an incredible story. And yeah, I really did love this movie because I went into it. I cried watching the trailer. Mm-hmm. But then when I watched the movie, the part that I cried the most at was the happiest point of the movie. Like the film by itself, I feel is kind of a feel-good movie.
Yeah.
Like you said, with the cancer is kind of, I mean, it's there, but it's about this woman that I wish I knew about more, when she was alive. Like I kick myself. I lived in New York in the 80s and the 90s. Like I'm sure I saw the name of the band playing and I just was still going about my life. My life was going on. It wasn't something that was like on my radar. I love that this movie introduced me to someone who just sounds like she was just this incredible woman and made incredible music.
Yeah. Her life gets 5 pods for sure.
Yeah. So I gave 5 Lotus Pods. And then, okay. So then our second rating is our tissue rating. Tina, on a scale of did not open that tissue box to, I don't know.
Honestly, I think the only time I got teared up was when she was standing up at a table and the entire band was there and she gave thanks to certain people. So it was a moment of gratitude that moved me in the whole movie.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, that part too, for me as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the parts that kind of made us emotional were positive things. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm thinking my 3.5 is, I think I was very much curious about more family interaction. I guess I wanted more depth. That's where I was left wanting for depth of relationships.
Oh, interesting.
So that tissue rating, I guess I got to give it half a tissue because I probably got choked up around that moment.
And I think there were 3 times that I got choked up at different levels. And so I'll give it 3 tissues. Yeah, because tissues, I mean, we could go up to 100, right? I mean, I don't know how many's in a box.
I don't know.
I got a box right here. I can't see. But yeah, I mean, this was a 3 tissue for me. But, and so it was like when she talked about her mother, when she gave the speech, and then when she went on stage.
Oh, okay. When she went on stage.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they don't talk about it at the end of the movie. The movie was released in 2015. And when it was released, I believe I found an article in Rolling Stone that I can link to, but I think that it said that they announced that her cancer had come back at the release of the documentary.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it doesn't really say anything about it at the end, right?
Right. All right, Leah. This brings us to the moment everyone's been waiting for out there.
Oh, yeah. This is the whole reason people listen to this podcast, is for the unofficial theme song. So we didn't have one for the last movie, but after watching this movie, the song is what's on the closing credits. I'm Still Here. And that song is going to be for the entire pod. So for all 3 episodes, that is our unofficial theme song. Sharon Jones and the Dap-Kings, I'm Still Here. The minute that song came on, I was like, this is our song. I think that song also could just kind of representative, that whole life goes on. I'm still here, like that whole attitude that she had throughout the movie. And so we will put a link to it in our show notes, and we'll put a link to the video on our website.
It's interesting. It also represents the fact that when you do a documentary of a personal cancer story or any publication, that goes on. That lives even after you're gone, whenever that happens.
Exactly. So however many years the movie came out in 15, that's 2000, was that 7? That was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I highly recommend this movie. If you are familiar with her music and her story and you haven't seen this movie, definitely watch it. If you are not familiar with her music or her story, definitely watch it. I mean, I'd watch it again.
I also think if you like this genre of music, you'll like it a lot too. I mean, because the music is a big part of the movie.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. I like soul and funk and such.
And I don't know anyone who doesn't like soul and R&B and funk. And so if you don't like it, don't tell me.
Especially if you're a friend.
Especially if you're a friend, because it's the foundation of rock and roll. And, it's the foundation of so much music that people listen to. And I think that is another reason why their music is so important, because it's pure. There's no auto tune. There's no any of that like fixing it up. I mean, it's just this raw, pure music. And I like a lot of different kinds of music, but so much is influenced by R&B and funk and soul that, it has a special place in my soul.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one more episode coming up in this series. It's Life Itself. And I think there are a couple of movies out there called Life Itself. It's the documentary. If you're following along, it's the documentary about Roger Ebert based on his autobiography. And so it is a 2014 film about Roger Ebert. And so again, I'm pushing for people to go out and get their library card because they can watch it for free on Canopy with a K. And then it's also on Amazon Prime. If you don't have Amazon Prime, you can always do the 7-day free trial and then remember to cancel. And there might be other ways of watching it as well. But yeah.
All right. That's our next one.
That's our next one. So if you like these episodes and maybe there's a series of movies you want us to review, a genre, because we're so good at this. Oh, our next movie's about a movie critic. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Send us a note. You can email us at thecancerpod@gmail.com. You can always leave reviews and rate us wherever you stream your podcast.
Yep. So follow, subscribe.
We're out there in social media.
What do the kids say? Smash that button.
Is that what the kids say? Oh, that's the YouTube thing. Oh, that's what the YouTubers say. And then you can always buy us a coffee. That's a great way to support us as well.
All right.
So on that note, I'm Dr. Leah Sherman.
And I'm Dr. Tina Kaiser.
And this is The Cancer Pod.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to The Cancer Pod. Remember to subscribe, review, and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media for updates. And as always, this is not medical advice. These are our opinions. Talk to your doctor before changing anything related to your treatment plan. The Cancer Pod is hosted by me, Dr. Leah Sherman, and by Dr. Tina Kaiser. Editing by Brogan Malloy. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. See you next time.